Yeah, okay, bye. Hello, I am Ricardo Green. This is Crash Course U.S. History, and today we're going to talk about the conflicts and protest movements that occurred during the Vietnam War. Okay, so giving an overview, many Americans opposed the war since it caused so much violence and devastation. Others claim that it was a conflict against war for Vietnamese independence. In general, the Vietnam War killed many people. What are you doing?
Continue to tell us the show. Continue.
Going more in depth about the war. Protesters saw many young working class men going into Vietnam War and never coming back. Many men went into the war and came back in body bags in increasing numbers. They became furious and began to protest against these wrongdoings. The United States had promised a victorious war, but that promise was soon broken since there were so many lives lost. In general, the Vietnam War killed people. The protests didn't start right when the U.S. declared war.
They came later on after the draft started to increase.
The first protest during this time period started around October 1965. Many young American men were drafted to go into the war. Those who could get out of the war by draft dodging were either rich or had direct relation to someone who played a major role in the war.
Many of the poor working class men were obligated to go into the war and fight, and they didn't have an option. Some would rip or tear up their draft papers. This was seen as a protest against the Vietnam War, and individuals who would do this were imprisoned because it was against the law.
For example, Muhammad Ali, a heavyweight boxing champion who tore up his draft papers, was convicted of draft evasion. He was also banned from boxing for 3 years. Ali was sentenced to 5 years in prison and had a $10,000 fine.
Protesters opposed the war because they believed it was another civil war. They believed that the U.S. had no right to intervene.
Now, onto the thought bubble.
More and more students and protesters began to oppose the war. They wanted the war to end quickly. The hippie movement claimed to make love, not war. Young women and men wanted to drop out of society. They cannot take the devastations of the deaths.
Another year of big protest was 1968. The Vietnam War was not only sending their own male youth to cause violence, but also killing large masses of Vietnamese children.
With North Vietnam came the blanket bombing raids that occurred almost every day. Protesters were very furious with the many lives of innocent Vietnamese children that were lost.
One of the most horrific incidents of violence against civilians, including children, during the Vietnam War was called the My Lai massacre on March 16 of 1968. American soldiers brutally killed the majority of the population of the South.
American Army officers managed to cover up the events of that day for a year before a soldier who had heard of the massacre sparked a wave of international outrage. The soldiers kept on saying that they were not responsible for all the deaths since they were ordered to do so by Lieutenant Connolly.
Which brings us to another topic of photojournalism on the battlefield. Was it necessarily okay for journalists to expose the devastations of the war to many Americans at home? Everything that was happening out on the battlefield could be seen from the television at home. It showed America what was truly going on.
Americans slowly started to lose faith in what they were being fed. This caused another protest of angry people all over the U.S. because they could not bear seeing the deaths of both sides, the Vietnamese and U.S. soldiers.
Why couldn't the U.S. sit down and be humble instead of intervening in the Vietnam War?
Oh, me from the past. Just shut up. Well, the U.S. intervened in the Vietnam War because they wanted to stop the spread of communism and promote peaceful democracy towards other countries. Americans had to help South Vietnam and end communism, which ended up as a fail since Ho Chi Minh's group, the Viet Minh, along with the rest of North Vietnam, eventually took over the South, spreading communism through the rest of Vietnam.
Student movements that were against the Vietnam War started in 1964. They sprung out of the University of California, Berkeley. It soon started spreading to different colleges and universities. The Student for a Democratic Society formed in the University of Michigan, which criticized America for starting wars.
An important group called the New Left formed from some of the college groups which challenged the forms of authority. The New Left was made to take place of the Old Left because the Old Left promoted socialism, which is a form of communism. They also promoted the people of America to have a voice and a democracy.
Another big movement that occurred was the Asian American movement during the Civil Rights Movement. The group mainly consisted of student activists who wanted to put an end to the Vietnam War.
Although this group mainly revolved around racial discrimination, racist hiring practices, and biased school curriculum, it also helped end the Vietnam War. Guess what time it is?
Summertime.
No, it's time for the mystery document. If I get it wrong, I get slapped in the face. And if I get it right, well, you know the drill. Good evening, my fellow Americans. Tonight I want to talk to you on a subject of deep concern to all Americans and to many people in all parts of the world, the war in Vietnam. I believe that one of the reasons for the deep division about Vietnam is that many Americans have lost confidence in what their government has told them about our policy. The American people cannot and should not be asked to support a policy which involves the overriding issue of war and peace unless they know the truth about the policy. Tonight, therefore, I would like to answer some of the questions that I know are on the minds of many of you listening to me. Muhammad Ali?
Wrong. It was President Nixon.
Okay, let's move forward. So basically, President Nixon is saying that American citizens no longer had trust in their government because it was hiding so many things from the public. For instance, the reality of what was happening in Vietnam and how the U.S. was doing at war.
Overall, the citizens, mainly college students, wondered why the U.S. were sacrificing their own people to fight a war that South Vietnam could fight on their own. But as we know, this was to stop the spread of communism, which still kept going on after the U.S. evacuated their troops on August 15, 1973.
Well, that's all that Oh, you speak French now?
See.
Oh. Well, that's all that we got for you guys today about the protests of the Vietnam War. Thanks for watching Crash Course U.S. History. Don't forget to like and subscribe. This is Ricardo Green, and this is Rachel Blue. See you next time.